Fire Ops 101 in Lincoln, Nebraska with IAFF Local 644 and Lincoln Fire and Rescue. We are bringing in 20 different citizens from our community stakeholders group, as well as some elected officials, to let them see exactly what firefighters do. They'll put on gear, they'll put on all of the protective equipment that they need to do the job that we do every day, and we'll have several different scenarios that they go through. Experience a live fire, a search and rescue operation, advancing hose lines, vehicle extrication, and a cardiac arrest emergency. These are the types of things that we do experience every day.
Well, I think that one of the sayings that you probably heard before is you can never fully explain what we do until you've done it, and even when you've done it, you can't really explain it to other people. And so this was kind of that opportunity to not only educate them both from a standpoint of maybe a lecture, but this was the hands-on, kind of that significant emotional event for them, so maybe that ties that together. Again, it's a very small piece of what we're trying to equate, but now when we ask them questions about the future of LFR, they're making informed decisions, not maybe bringing in preconceived bad information into the equation. And the fact that, you know, they hear a common message from not just the chief, but the firefighters and the support staff, and, you know, multiple different perspectives, helps them make a better decision.
It's a lot of hard work, you know, you kind of take for granted stuff's not light. When you got the dummy, you know, I don't know how much the thing weighed, probably less than a normal person does, but you know, it's not grabbing back at you. It's hard to get a hold of, hard to move, even with a couple of guys, so a lot of work in a short amount of time.
That hose around, or
no,
you think multiple people?
Definitely. You know, what helped me was significantly on it was there was the immediate person behind me that was pushing the hose forward, and then another person behind them pushing the hose forward. And then when we got to the discharge point, then I had to have my backup, my first hose person, bump up against me, so that when we discharged the nozzle, that it didn't knock us backwards. Then we were able to navigate the stream of the water.
We were in the Flash Simulator.
Flash Simulator, okay. What'd you think about that?
It was, well, you know, it's a little intimidating going in when all the doors go shut, but it was pretty incredible. Just the heat alone is something that I didn't expect. And just to hear the firefighters say that, you know, this is a pretty regular heat level that we're used to, not anything extraordinary, not anything too low, but that heat and taking your hand and kind of rising it up, you know, when you're on the ground, and feeling how hot it gets the further you go, that was pretty incredible too.
The level of fear and anxiety that goes into experiencing that heat is insane. I mean, it was definitely scary not being able to see and hear, but the heat level and knowing that you could potentially get burned makes things scarier.
Just this panic that comes over you naturally, I think that's probably evolutionary. We're as humans afraid of fire, and I got in there and started heating up. started breathing, you know, there's these deals going off, the alarms and everything. I mean, it's a lot to come at you at one time, you know, it really overloads your senses. And at the same time, you're trying to focus on breathing, you know, in a pretty standard way so that you don't, you know, hyperventilate or anything. As it got hotter and hotter, and you know, the captain in there was explaining what was happening, you know, you just get a little bit more nervous and you don't know exactly what's going to happen. And then I started really experiencing some heat on the upper part of my back and then the upper part of my legs, and you know, that burning sensation really made me very nervous. I was just kind of wondering if anybody else was feeling that in there. I was, you know, thinking that, gosh, this is a lot more heat than you would ever expect down that low and seeing it.
What's amazing is that they were telling us is with every inch of us covered, if we didn't, any of us was exposed, part of us was exposed, that would have been burnt. And it's amazing the expertise they have on the fires, the type of fires, how to make it behave they want it to behave. It's really awe-inspiring. You know, it's a very beautiful scenario with the fire in there, but it is so powerful and you have to respect it. And these men know it inside and out, and it's, oh my gosh, you feel so much safer knowing how knowledgeable that they are in working on it. But it was very hot, got hotter. Like Steve said,
well, we had a gentleman that came into a break room that we were in, had visibly something coming from his mouth, said he was having trouble breathing, and we quickly got him to a chair so we could assess the situation. And once we found out that he wasn't breathing, we got him down. He passed out and we got him down to the floor while somebody was calling 911. Further finding out later by talking to the medical personnel as they were going through their portion of the scenario, to find out that we didn't have that fourth person, I thought was the most impactful, that the liaison between the witnesses and the medical team that could get that information back to the hospital so they could better treat. That was the most impactful part, I think, for me.
Okay, so did you do CPR at all, or what?
I did do CPR.
Okay, and what was that like doing CPR? Did you feel comfortable doing it?
I did feel comfortable doing it, and I've taken CPR classes before. I didn't know we didn't go through it that long. It's exhausting.
Yeah, absolutely. And you said, were you guys riding 3 on your engine or 4?
3.
You guys had 3.
We
so,
had 3.
Do you felt like you could have used an extra set of hands to do some of the things you guys were doing?
Absolutely. I think it's extremely important to have that fourth person there. There's so much going on with people talking to each other that that fourth person talking to the witnesses and getting people back would be crucial.
Case of the extrications or medical, there's coordination through everything. Everyone has an assignment and they know what to do and what to look for on that assignment. CPR is exhausting, and so they know a period of time. They have clocks in their heads, so to speak, and they know when it's time to change out for someone doing CPR. The car extrication, the same way. We're talking about heavy equipment. We're talking about knowing what your assignments are. We're always thinking about safety. And what amazed me on medical and extrication from the vehicle is speed. There's a need to get that patient out of that crumpled up vehicle within a 10-minute period. And it took us a half hour. Of course, we're new at it, but they know about pressure points. They know about safety, bags, props in order to keep a vehicle from turning over and to make it stable for the firefighters to come through. But in my line of work, I have a clock in my head, and the firefighters and the paramedics to some extent also have that clock in their head.